I'm going to keep this as straightforward as I can because, honestly, typing this out is the only thing keeping me from doing something I might actually regret. 3 days ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop on Maple Street, the one near the gym I go to every morning, just scrolling through my phone and drinking terrible coffee because I'm too cheap to go to the fancy place 2 blocks over. That's when I heard Selena's voice behind me. My girlfriend. The woman I've been with for 2 years. The woman I bought a car for 6 months ago because hers died. And she was crying about how she'd lose her job without transportation. The woman whose rent I've been covering for the past year because she said she was saving up to go back to school. She was on the phone and she wasn't exactly whispering. She said, "He's so pathetic. Still thinks I love him. I've been texting Daryl every night while he sleeps." Then her friend, whoever was on the other end, must have said something funny because Selena laughed. She actually laughed and said, "Girl, you're savage. Does he still buy you those expensive dinners?" And Selena just kept going. Every Friday, he even asked about kids yesterday. Meanwhile, Daryl's taking me to Spain next month after I dump him. I sat there with my back to her, phone in my hand, and I didn't move. I didn't turn around. I didn't interrupt. I just sat there and listened to every single word while my coffee got cold and people walked past like it was just another Thursday morning. She talked about my boring personality. She talked about my dad bod, which, yeah, I've put on some weight since we started dating because she always wanted to order takeout and watch movies instead of going to the gym with me. She talked about how she'd already moved half her stuff to Daryl's place. She said I'd come home to an empty apartment and wouldn't even know what hit me. She said Daryl was better in bed. She said I was too trusting and that's what made it so easy. The friend asked when she was planning to do it and Selena said next week, after I pay her credit card bill like I do every month. She said she'd already packed the jewelry I bought her for our anniversary. She said she took photos of my bank statements when I wasn't looking, so Daryl could help her figure out how much she could squeeze out of me before she left. I need you all to understand something. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't devastated in that moment. I was angry. The kind of angry where everything goes quiet and clear and you start thinking about things you've never thought about before. Because here's what Selena doesn't know about me. My name is Atlas and I'm 29 years old. I work in commercial real estate, specifically in property management, for a firm that handles residential and retail spaces across 3 states. I make good money. Really good money. Selena thinks I make decent money because that's what I told her. But my actual salary is almost double what she believes. I've been saving and investing since I was 22, and I own 3 rental properties that bring in additional income every month. The apartment we live in, it's mine. I bought it 4 years ago. My name is on the deed. Selena's name isn't on anything. That car I bought her, it's in my name. The credit cards I pay off every month, I'm an authorized user, but they're primarily in my name. And I have access to every statement and every purchase she's ever made. The furniture she thinks she's going to take with her, I have receipts for everything with my card and my name on them. Every single expensive dinner, every weekend trip, every piece of jewelry, every time I've covered her rent or bought her clothes or paid for her phone plan. I have records of all of it. Selena moved in with me 8 months ago. Before that, she was living with 2 roommates in an apartment across town and complaining constantly about how they never cleaned and how one of them had a boyfriend who was always over. I told her to move in with me. I paid for the moving truck. I bought new furniture because she said her old stuff was worn out and embarrassing. I set up a whole corner of the living room as her workspace because she said she needed a quiet place to study, even though I've never actually seen her study anything. So when I heard her in that coffee shop talking about how she was going to clean me out and leave me with nothing, I didn't panic. I smiled. I actually smiled because I realized she had no idea who she was dealing with. I finished my coffee. I walked out of that coffee shop and went straight to my office. I didn't text her. I didn't call her. I went to work like it was a normal day and I started making calls. I called my buddy who works in banking and I asked him about freezing access to accounts. I called another friend who's a property lawyer and I asked him about tenant rights and eviction procedures. I called my company's legal department and I scheduled a meeting to discuss personal asset protection. Then I went home that evening like nothing happened. Selena was on the couch watching some reality show and eating takeout that I'm sure she put on one of the credit cards I pay for. She smiled when I walked in. She asked how my day was. She kissed me and asked if I wanted to order dessert. I said sure, and I sat down next to her and I watched her scroll through her phone, probably texting Daryl, while I ate food I paid for in an apartment I owned sitting on furniture I bought. And I didn't say a word about what I'd heard because I needed time to plan. Here's what Selena doesn't understand. She thinks I'm this nice, easygoing guy who's going to just accept whatever she does because I've accepted everything else. She thinks I'll be confused and hurt, and I'll probably beg her to stay. She thinks she's the smart one here because she's been planning this for weeks or maybe months. But I've been planning too. Not for this specifically, but I've always been the kind of person who protects myself. I've seen too many guys get taken advantage of by women who saw them as walking wallets. My dad went through it with his second wife, and I watched him lose half of everything he'd built because he was too trusting and didn't protect his assets. I told myself I'd never let that happen to me. So when Selena moved in, I made sure everything stayed in my name. When I bought her that car, I made sure the title was mine. When I added her to my credit cards, I made sure I could remove her whenever I wanted. I didn't do this because I didn't trust her. I did it because I'm not stupid. The next morning, I got up early and I went to the bank. I removed Selena as an authorized user on every credit card. I changed my banking passwords. I set up alerts for any unusual account activity. Then, I went to work and I started phase 2. I called the dealership where I bought Selena's car and I confirmed that since my name was on the title, I could report it as stolen if someone took it without my permission. They said yes. I called my insurance company and I had Selena removed from my auto insurance policy. I called my property management company and I informed them that I might need to start an eviction process soon and I wanted to know what steps I needed to take. One of my coworkers asked if I was okay because apparently I looked intense. I told him I was fine. Better than fine, actually. I felt focused. I felt clear-headed. I felt like I was finally taking control of a situation that could have destroyed me if I hadn't found out in time. That evening, Selena tried to use one of the credit cards to order food, and it got declined. She came into the bedroom where I was working on my laptop, and she asked me what was wrong with the card. I told her I didn't know. Maybe there was fraud protection triggered. I'd look into it tomorrow. She seemed annoyed, but she didn't push it. She just used her own card, which made me wonder how much money she actually has if she's been planning to leave me anyway. I started watching her more carefully after that. I noticed she was on her phone constantly. I noticed she'd step out onto the balcony to take calls. I noticed she started staying up later than me, sitting in the living room with her laptop. One night, I got up to get water, and I saw her quickly close her laptop screen when she heard me coming. She said she was just watching videos and couldn't sleep. I also started noticing things were missing. Small things. A watch I kept in my dresser drawer. Some old family photos that were in a box in the closet. A backup phone charger. My good headphones. She was already taking stuff and I hadn't even confronted her yet. Yesterday I came home from work and Selena told me she needed to talk. She sat me down on the couch and she looked serious and sad. And she said she'd been thinking a lot about us lately. She said she felt like we'd grown apart. She said she needed space to figure out what she wanted. She said maybe we should take a break. I looked at her and I said okay. Just like that. Okay. She seemed surprised. She probably expected me to argue or ask her to reconsider or promise to change. Instead, I just said, okay, if that's what you need, then we should do that. She asked if I was upset and I said no, I understood. Relationships change and if she needed space, then she should have it. I asked her how long she thought she'd need and she said, maybe a month or 2. I said, sure, that's fine. Then I asked her when she wanted to move out. That's when her expression changed. She said, move out. Why would she move out? This was her home too. I reminded her very calmly that the apartment was in my name. She'd moved in 8 months ago, but she wasn't on the lease and she didn't pay rent. Legally, this was my apartment, and if she wanted space, she'd need to find somewhere else to stay. She got defensive immediately. She said she couldn't just find a new place in a few days. She said she had rights. She said I couldn't just kick her out. I told her I wasn't kicking her out. I was simply responding to her request for space. If she wanted to take a break from the relationship, it made sense for her to stay somewhere else during that break. I suggested she could stay with friends or maybe with whoever she'd been texting every night while I was asleep. Her face went white. She asked what I meant and I said nothing. Just that she seemed to have a lot of friends she talked to late at night. She stammered something about how she had privacy and I was being controlling. I said I wasn't being controlling, I was being practical. Then she switched tactics. She started crying. She said she didn't actually want a break, she was just confused. She loved me, she didn't want to lose me. She said she'd been stressed and wasn't thinking clearly. She reached for my hand and she said, please, let's not do this, let's talk about it. I pulled my hand away and I told her we could talk about it, but first I needed her to be honest with me. I asked her who Daryl was. The crying stopped. Just like that, she stared at me and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, sure you do, Daryl. The guy you've been texting every night, the guy who's apparently taking you to Spain next month. I asked her if that was still happening or if she wanted to postpone the trip since we were taking a break. She denied everything. She said I was paranoid and jealous and making things up. She said there was no Daryl. She said I was trying to manipulate her. She actually said I was manipulating her. The woman who'd been planning to rob me and leave was calling me manipulative. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stood up and I told her she had until the end of the week to figure out where she was going to stay. I said I'd be filing a formal eviction notice if she wasn't gone voluntarily. I said the car she'd been driving needed to be returned because it was registered in my name and I'd be reporting it stolen if she took it with her. She called me insane. She said I had no proof of anything. She said she'd call the police if I tried to kick her out illegally. I told her to go ahead and call them. I said when they arrived, I'd show them the deed to the apartment with my name on it, and I'd explain that my guest refused to leave after I asked her to. I said I'd also mention the missing items from my bedroom and ask them to check her bags. That shut her up. She grabbed her phone and she locked herself in the bathroom. I heard her making calls, probably to Daryl, probably to her friends, probably trying to figure out how this had all gone so wrong so fast. I sat on the couch and I waited. After about 30 minutes, she came out and she said she was going to stay with her friend Tiffany for a few days while we both cooled off. I said that sounded like a good idea. She started throwing things in a bag, and I watched her carefully to make sure she only took her own clothes and belongings. Before she left, she turned to me and she said this wasn't over. She said she'd come back for the rest of her stuff. She said I'd regret treating her this way. I told her I'd have everything she owned boxed up and ready for pickup by this weekend. She slammed the door when she left. The neighbors probably heard it. I didn't care. That was last night. This morning I woke up and checked my doorbell camera, and there was footage from around 2 in the morning. Selena standing outside my door, not knocking, just standing there. Her makeup was running. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. At one point, she sat down in the hallway outside my apartment with her back against the door. The camera has audio and I could hear her. She was saying, "Please, baby, please. I'm sorry, it was a joke. Daryl means nothing. I'll die without you. Please, I'm pregnant. It's yours. Open the door. I'm sorry, don't do this." She said the pregnancy thing twice. Then she said she had nowhere to go. Then she said she'd tell everyone I was abusing her. She sat there for almost an hour before she finally left. I saved that footage. I have it backed up in 3 different places because here's the thing, everyone needs to understand. I'm not done. Not even close. Selena thinks she can just apologize and come back. She thinks she can claim pregnancy and I'll fold. She thinks she can threaten me with abuse accusations and I'll get scared. She has no idea what's coming. I've been doing research all morning. I've been looking into what happens when someone takes community property they don't own during a breakup. I've been looking into small claims court procedures. I've been calculating the value of everything I've bought her over the past 2 years. The car, the furniture, the clothes, the jewelry, the credit card bills I've paid, the rent I've covered before she moved in. It adds up to over $40,000. $40,000. Money I spent because I thought we were building a life together. And now, I'm going to get every penny back. Update 1. Okay, so for everyone who commented on my last post asking for updates, buckle up because the last 4 days have been absolutely insane. And to the person who said I should just let her take her stuff and move on, yeah, no, that's not happening. You don't get to plan to rob someone for months and then just walk away when you get caught. So when I left off, Selena had spent an hour outside my apartment door at 2 in the morning crying and claiming she was pregnant. I saved all that doorbell footage because I'm not an idiot. Friday morning, I woke up, went to the gym, came back and started boxing up her stuff like I promised. Everything she owned went into boxes. Clothes, shoes, makeup, all of it. I took photos of everything as I packed it. Every single item. Time-stamped photos showing exactly what belonged to her. While I was doing this, my phone started blowing up. Text messages from Selena saying we needed to talk. This was all a misunderstanding. She loved me. Please give her another chance. Then messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Her friends, apparently. One girl named Megan telling me I was being cruel and unreasonable. Another telling me Selena was devastated, and I needed to be a man and work this out. I didn't respond to any of them. I just kept packing. Around noon, Selena showed up. She had a key, so she let herself in and found me in the bedroom with half her stuff already boxed. She looked terrible. Red eyes, hair a mess, wearing the same clothes from the night before. She started talking immediately. She said she was so sorry she'd made a huge mistake. There was no Daryl. She'd been talking to her friend's boyfriend, and I must have misheard. She'd never cheat on me. She loved me so much. Please, could we just sit down and talk about this like adults? I kept packing. I told her the boxes would be ready by end of the day and she could pick them up whenever was convenient. She grabbed my arm and tried to stop me from packing. She said I was being insane. I was overreacting. I was throwing away 2 years over nothing. That's when I turned around and looked at her directly. I told her I'd heard everything she said in that coffee shop. Every word. Her conversation with her friend about how pathetic I was, how boring I was, how she was texting Daryl every night while I slept, how she'd already moved half her stuff to his place, how she was planning to clean me out and go to Spain with him after she dumped me. I told her I'd heard her laugh about my dad bod and my boring personality, and how easy I was to manipulate. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 10 seconds. Denial, then panic, then anger. She said I had no right to eavesdrop on her private conversations. I reminded her she was in a public coffee shop talking loud enough for half the place to hear. She said it didn't matter. I was taking things out of context, twisting her words. I asked her what context made it okay to plan to rob your boyfriend and run off with another man. She started crying again. She said she'd been venting to her friend because we'd been having problems and she didn't know how to talk to me about it. She said Daryl was just a friend, and I was being jealous and possessive. She said she'd never moved anything to anyone's place, and I was making things up because I wanted an excuse to break up with her. I walked into the closet and I opened the box where I keep important documents. Inside was a list I'd made of every item that had been in that closet 3 weeks ago versus what was there now. Missing items, my grandfather's watch, 3 family photo albums, my spare laptop, a pair of expensive sunglasses, 2 vintage band t-shirts, and about $200 in cash I'd kept in a drawer. I showed her the list, and I asked her where all that stuff was. She said she didn't know what I was talking about. She said maybe I'd misplaced things. She said I was being paranoid. I told her I wanted all of it back or I'd be filing a police report for theft. She said, go ahead. I had no proof she took anything. That's when I showed her the recordings from my home security cameras. Yeah, I have cameras inside my apartment. I installed them 6 months ago after my place got broken into while I was at work. They're small and they blend into the decor, and Selena never noticed them or never asked about them. The recordings showed her going through my stuff, taking things, putting them in her bags. Clear video evidence of her stealing from me. She completely lost it. She started screaming that I was disgusting for recording her without permission, that I was violating her privacy, that this was probably illegal. I told her actually it's not illegal to have security cameras in your own home. I told her what is illegal is stealing someone's property. I asked her again where my stuff was. She wouldn't answer. She just kept crying and saying I was horrible and she couldn't believe I'd spy on her like this. I went back to packing her things. She stood there watching me for a few minutes and then she grabbed her phone and left. I figured that was the end of it for the day, but about 2 hours later my doorbell rang. I checked the camera and there was Selena standing there with an older woman I'd never met before. I opened the door and Selena introduced her as her mother, Abigail. Great. Just great. Abigail immediately started in on me. She said Selena had told her everything, and she couldn't believe how I was treating her daughter. She said Selena was a sweet girl who'd done nothing wrong, and I was being controlling and abusive. She said kicking Selena out with nowhere to go was cruel, and she was ashamed of me. She said if I was any kind of man, I'd sit down with Selena and work this out properly instead of throwing a tantrum. I looked at Selena and asked her what exactly she'd told her mother. Selena said she'd told her the truth, that we'd had a fight and I was kicking her out over nothing. I asked if she'd mentioned Daryl. Silence. I asked if she'd mentioned the planning to clean me out part. More silence. Abigail said she didn't know what I was talking about, and Selena said I was making things up again. So I pulled out my phone, and I played them the audio from the coffee shop. I'd recorded it that day on my phone. The whole conversation. Selena talking about how pathetic I was, how she was texting Daryl every night, how she'd already moved stuff to his place, how I'd come home to an empty apartment, all of it. Abigail's face changed as she listened. When it finished, she turned to Selena and asked her if that was really her on the recording. Selena said yes, but it wasn't what it sounded like. She'd been joking around with her friend. She didn't mean any of it. Abigail asked her who Daryl was. Selena said he was nobody, just some guy from work. I interrupted and said if he's nobody from work, then why is he taking you to Spain next month? Selena told me to shut up. Her mother told her not to talk to me like that. Then Abigail asked me what I wanted from this situation. I told her I wanted 3 things. First, I wanted all my stolen property returned. Second, I wanted Selena out of my apartment by Sunday night. Third, I wanted reimbursement for the money I'd spent on her over the past 2 years. I pulled out my phone again and I showed them both the spreadsheet I'd made. Every dinner, every gift, every credit card bill, every month of rent I'd covered before she moved in, the car I'd bought her, everything. The total came to $41,832. Abigail looked at that number and then looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She said there was no way Selena owed me that much money. I said every expense was documented with receipts and bank statements. Selena said I was insane if I thought she was paying me back for gifts. I told her they weren't gifts. They were investments in a relationship she was planning to destroy while stealing from me. Her mother asked if we could all just calm down and discuss this reasonably. She said clearly there had been miscommunications on both sides and maybe we could work something out. She suggested Selena could pay me back slowly over time and maybe I could reconsider the breakup if Selena apologized properly. I told Abigail no. There was no miscommunication. Her daughter had been planning to rob me and run off with another man. The only reason it didn't work was because I overheard her bragging about it. I said Selena could either pay me back voluntarily or I'd take her to small claims court and let a judge decide. Selena started yelling that I couldn't do that. She didn't have $40,000. I was trying to ruin her life. I said no. I was trying to get back what I'd invested in someone who'd been lying to me for months. I said if she didn't have the money, then maybe Daryl could help her out since they were apparently so serious. That's when things got really ugly. Selena told her mother I was abusive and controlling, and she'd only stayed with me because she was afraid of what I'd do if she left. She said I'd been monitoring her phone and following her and threatening her. Abigail looked concerned and asked if that was true. I pulled out my phone again and I played them the doorbell footage from 2 nights ago. Selena at my door at 2 in the morning, crying and begging and claiming to be pregnant. Abigail asked Selena if she was pregnant. Selena said maybe, she didn't know yet, she'd been feeling sick. I said she'd also claimed Daryl meant nothing, and she'd die without me and she'd tell everyone I was abusing her. I said that was on camera too. I asked Abigail if that sounded like someone who was afraid of their abusive boyfriend. Selena's mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked Selena to wait in the car. Selena argued, but Abigail insisted. Once Selena left, Abigail turned to me and apologized. She said she didn't know the full story, and clearly Selena had been lying to her. She said she'd raised her daughter better than this, and she was disappointed and embarrassed. I appreciated the apology, but I told her it didn't change anything. Selena still needed to return my property and leave my apartment. Abigail asked if there was any way to work out a payment plan for the money. She said Selena definitely didn't have $40,000 and probably never would. She said if I took her to court, it would destroy Selena's credit and make it impossible for her to rent anywhere or get loans. I told her that wasn't my problem. Selena should have thought about consequences before she planned to rob me. Abigail said she understood but asked me to consider being merciful. She said Selena had made terrible choices, but she was still young and could learn from this. Young. Selena is 27 years old. She's not some naive kid. She's a grown woman who deliberately planned to destroy me financially and emotionally. But I didn't argue with her mother about it. Instead, I told Abigail I'd think about a payment plan if Selena returned all my stolen property immediately and moved out without causing any more drama. Abigail said she'd talk to her daughter. Then she left. About an hour later, Selena texted me asking where I wanted her to drop off my stuff. I told her she could leave it outside my door. She said she wanted to talk to me first. I said no. She said I was being childish. I didn't respond. That evening, there was a bag outside my apartment door. Inside was my grandfather's watch, the sunglasses, the cash, and one of the photo albums. Everything else was still missing. I texted Selena asking where the rest was. She said that's all she had. I said the cameras show you taking more than that. She said I'd have to prove it. So now, I'm dealing with someone who's still trying to play games even after getting caught. She returned some stuff to make it seem like she's cooperating but kept the valuable items. My spare laptop is worth about $1,500. The vintage t-shirts are worth about $300 each. The other photo albums have pictures of my grandparents and my parents that can't be replaced. I'm done being nice about this. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the police station to file a theft report. I'm going to show them the camera footage and the list of missing items. Then I'm going to start the formal eviction process and file in small claims court for the full amount she owes me. And for everyone asking about the pregnancy claim, I don't believe it for a second. She's been on birth control the entire time we've been together, and she's never missed a period or shown any symptoms. It was just a desperate manipulation attempt when she realized she was losing control. Selena keeps texting me. She's alternating between apologizing and threatening me. One message says she'll do anything to fix this. The next message says I'll regret treating her this way. Then another apology. Then another threat. She's unraveling, and honestly, watching someone who thought they were so clever completely fall apart is almost satisfying. Almost. Because I'm still out $40,000 and I still don't have all my property back. But I'm patient, and I'm methodical. And unlike Selena, I actually think things through before I act. This isn't over, not by a long shot. Update 2. All right. I know some of you have been waiting for this update, and honestly, I've been too busy dealing with this mess to post sooner. For those telling me to just move on and let it go, respectfully, no. You don't plan to financially destroy someone and then get to walk away clean just because you got caught. That's not how consequences work. So when I left off, Selena had returned some of my stolen property but kept the expensive stuff. I told her mother I was filing a police report and taking Selena to small claims court. That was Sunday night. Monday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and about 30 text messages. Most were from Selena. Some were from her friends. 3 were from numbers I didn't recognize. The messages from Selena were all over the place. She'd start with, "I'm so sorry, baby. Please give me another chance." Then switch to, "You're a terrible person for doing this to me," then back to, "I love you so much we can fix this." It was exhausting just reading them. One of the unknown numbers sent me a message saying, "This is Daryl. We need to talk." I stared at that message for a solid minute because I couldn't believe this guy had the audacity to contact me. I didn't respond. About an hour later, he sent another message saying, "Selena told me everything, and I think we should meet up and handle this like adults." Handle this like adults. The man who'd been sleeping with my girlfriend while I paid her bills wanted to handle things like adults. I screenshotted both messages and saved them, but I still didn't respond. I went to work like normal. Around lunchtime, my assistant told me there was someone in the lobby asking to see me. I checked the security camera feed at the front desk, and there was Selena sitting in one of the chairs. I told my assistant to inform her I wasn't available. 20 minutes later, my assistant came back and said Selena was refusing to leave until she talked to me. She was causing a scene, and other people in the building were starting to notice. I went down to the lobby myself. Selena saw me coming and stood up immediately. She looked better than she had the last time I saw her. Hair done, makeup on, wearing one of the dresses I'd bought her for a work event last year. She tried to hug me, and I stepped back. I told her she needed to leave because this was my workplace and she wasn't welcome here. She said she just wanted 5 minutes to talk. I said we had nothing to talk about. She said yes, we did. She'd been thinking about everything, and she understood why I was upset, but we needed to find a solution that worked for both of us. I asked her what solution she had in mind. She said, maybe we could forget about the money and the stolen items and just part ways peacefully. I actually laughed. I asked her if she seriously thought I was going to just forget about $40,000 and my grandfather's belongings. She said I was being petty and vindictive, and those things didn't really matter in the long run. I told her they mattered to me. She said, fine, what if she paid me back a little bit each month, like $100, until the debt was settled? I did the math in my head. $100 a month for $41,000 would take her 340 months. That's over 28 years. I told her that wasn't acceptable. She asked what would be acceptable then. I said the full amount plus the return of all my property within 30 days or I'd proceed with legal action. She started crying right there in my office building lobby. She said I was trying to destroy her life over a mistake. I said no, I was trying to get back what was mine after she tried to destroy my life on purpose. She said she'd never actually gone through with it, so I should give her credit for that. I reminded her the only reason she didn't go through with it was because I caught her first. Then she said something that made me realize just how deep this went. She said she'd only been planning it because Daryl told her she deserved better than me. She said Daryl had been pointing out all my flaws and convincing her that I was holding her back. She said he'd promised her a better life if she left me and took whatever she could. She said it was his idea to move her stuff to his place gradually so I wouldn't notice. I asked her how long she'd been seeing Daryl. She said they'd been talking for about 6 months, but only got physical 2 months ago. 6 months. Half a year of lying to my face while planning this with someone else. I asked her how they met. She said they worked together at her old job before she quit last year. I remembered her quitting that job. She'd told me it was because her boss was difficult and the hours were terrible. She'd been unemployed for 3 months after that, and I'd covered all her expenses while she looked for something new. Now I was wondering if she'd even been looking for work or if she'd just been spending time with Daryl while I paid for everything. I asked her if she'd actually been job hunting during those 3 months. She didn't answer right away. Then she said she'd been figuring out what she wanted to do with her life. That wasn't an answer to my question. Security came over then because we'd been talking for a while and Selena's crying was attracting attention. I told them everything was fine, but Selena was just leaving. She grabbed my arm and said, please, we're not done talking. I need you to understand. I removed her hand from my arm and I walked back to the elevator. She called after me saying this wasn't fair. I wasn't listening to her. She deserved a chance to explain. I went back to my office and I sent an email to building security with Selena's photo and a request that she not be allowed in the building anymore. Then I went back to work. That evening, I got a message from Daryl again. He said Selena was really upset and I needed to stop being so harsh with her. He said she'd made mistakes, but so had I by being controlling and not giving her enough freedom in the relationship. He said I should man up and take responsibility for my part in this situation. This guy was actually lecturing me about taking responsibility. I finally responded. I told him he'd been sleeping with someone else's girlfriend while that person paid her bills and supported her financially. I told him if he thought Selena deserved better, then he was welcome to take on the $40,000 in debt she'd accumulated. I told him to lose my number. He responded immediately saying it wasn't his problem what Selena did before they got serious. I pointed out they'd been talking for 6 months while she lived with me. He said that was different because Selena had told him we were basically broken up and just living together for convenience. I asked him if people who are basically broken up usually talk about having kids together. Silence after that. Tuesday morning, my doorbell camera caught Selena and Daryl standing outside my apartment. It was early, around 7. They were having an argument. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught bits and pieces. Daryl was saying something about how this wasn't what he'd signed up for, and Selena was yelling at him that he'd promised to help her. He said he'd promised to help her leave me, not deal with lawsuits and theft charges. She said he was a coward. He said she was the one who'd screwed everything up by getting caught. Then Selena started pounding on my door. I was already awake and getting ready for work, but I didn't answer. She yelled that she knew I was home and I needed to open the door. Daryl told her to stop making a scene. She told him to shut up. They argued for another few minutes and then left. I saved that footage too. Every interaction, every conversation, every threat, I was saving all of it because I knew eventually I'd need evidence of harassment. Later that day, I went to the police station like I'd planned. I filed a theft report and I brought all my documentation. The officer took my statement and reviewed the security camera footage showing Selena taking my belongings. He said they'd investigate and contact me with next steps. He also suggested I might want to consider a restraining order if Selena kept showing up at my home and workplace. I told him I'd think about it. Wednesday, I filed the paperwork for small claims court. The filing fee was $250, but it was worth it. The court date got scheduled for 6 weeks out. I had the court send the summons to Selena's mother's address since that's where Selena said she was staying. Thursday afternoon, I got a call from Abigail, Selena's mother. She said Selena had received the court summons and was having a complete breakdown. She said Selena couldn't afford a lawyer and didn't know how to defend herself. She asked me again if we could work something out before this went to court. I told Abigail I was open to discussing a settlement if Selena returned all my property and agreed to a payment plan with real monthly amounts, not $100 for 30 years. Abigail asked what kind of monthly amount I was thinking. I said at minimum $1,000 a month. That would pay it off in about 3.5 years. Abigail said Selena didn't make enough money to pay $1,000 a month. I asked what Selena's monthly income was. Abigail said Selena had been working part-time at a retail store making about $1,500 a month, $1,500 a month, while living with me rent-free and having me pay for everything. I asked Abigail what Selena had been doing with her paychecks, if I was covering all her expenses. Abigail didn't know. I said that's something Selena would need to explain because from my perspective, she'd been saving up money while planning to rob me. Abigail got quiet and then said she'd talk to Selena and get back to me. Friday evening, someone knocked on my door around 8. I checked the camera, and it was Daryl, alone this time. I didn't open the door. He knocked again and said he knew I was home, and we needed to talk man to man. I stayed quiet. He kept knocking and said I was being immature and he wasn't leaving until I opened the door. I called the police non-emergency line and reported someone refusing to leave my property. While I was on the phone with them, Daryl was still knocking and getting louder. He said I was ruining Selena's life over money, and I should be ashamed of myself. He said Selena was a good person who'd made a mistake, and I was treating her like a criminal. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. Through my security camera, I watched them talk to Daryl. He was trying to explain that he was there to resolve a dispute between me and his girlfriend. One of the officers asked if I'd invited him to my home. Daryl said no, but this was important. The officer told him he needed to leave or they'd arrest him for trespassing. Daryl argued for a minute, but eventually left. After the police cleared the area, I opened my door and talked to the officers myself. I explained the situation briefly. My ex-girlfriend had been planning to rob me. I'd caught her. Now she and her new boyfriend kept harassing me. I showed them some of the footage from my doorbell camera. They took notes and said I should definitely consider that restraining order. One of them said if Daryl came back again to call immediately and they'd arrest him. Saturday morning, I woke up to an Instagram DM from someone named Tiffany. She said she was Selena's friend and she needed to tell me something important about Selena's side of the story. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Tiffany said Selena had been planning to leave me for a while because I was emotionally unavailable and didn't appreciate her. She said Selena had been scared to leave because she thought I'd react badly. She said when Selena met Daryl, he'd given her the courage to finally plan her exit. She said everything Selena did was because she felt trapped and didn't know how else to get out. I responded, asking why. If Selena felt trapped, she'd spent 6 months planning to steal from me instead of just having an honest conversation about wanting to break up. Tiffany said Selena didn't think I'd let her leave. I said I'm not a prison warden. Selena was free to leave whenever she wanted. She just wasn't free to rob me on the way out. Tiffany said I was being deliberately obtuse and refusing to see Selena's perspective. I told Tiffany that Selena's perspective didn't matter because planning to steal from someone and cheat on them isn't justified no matter how you feel about the relationship. I said if Tiffany was really Selena's friend, she'd tell Selena to return my property and work out a realistic payment plan before this got worse. Tiffany said I was a heartless person. Then she blocked me. Sunday was quiet. No messages, no visitors, nothing. I spent the day organizing all my evidence and preparing for court. I made copies of everything: bank statements, receipts, security footage, text messages, the audio from the coffee shop, all of it. I created a timeline showing when I'd made each purchase for Selena and how much each item cost. I printed out the lease to my apartment showing only my name. I gathered the title to the car showing only my name. Everything was documented. Everything was organized. Everything was ready. Because unlike Selena, who'd spent months planning to destroy me and failed, I was spending weeks planning to hold her accountable, and I wasn't going to fail. This goes to court in 5 weeks, and I'm going to win. Final update. So this is probably going to be my last update because everything finally came to a head. And honestly, I'm exhausted from dealing with this situation for the past 2 months. For everyone who's been following along, thanks for the support and the advice. And for the people who kept saying I should just let it go and move on, you'll see why that would have been the dumbest thing I could have done. The court date was set for yesterday. 6 weeks of waiting while Selena and Daryl kept trying different tactics to get me to drop everything. I'm going to walk you through what happened during those 6 weeks and then what went down in court because it was honestly better than I could have planned. Week 1, after my last update, Selena's mother Abigail contacted me again. She said she'd been talking to Selena about finances, and apparently Selena had been saving money but had spent most of it on things for Daryl. New clothes to impress him, trips they'd taken together, gifts she'd bought him. Abigail said Selena had about $4,000 in her account total. I told Abigail that was a start, but nowhere near what Selena owed me. Abigail asked if I'd be willing to accept the $4,000 plus monthly payments. I said maybe, but I wanted to know what happened to the rest of my property first. The laptop, the photo albums, the vintage shirts. Abigail said she'd asked Selena about it. 2 days later, I got a package delivered to my apartment. Inside was my laptop and one of the photo albums. The laptop had been factory reset, all my data wiped. The photo album was the least important one, mostly just pictures from random vacations. Everything that actually mattered was still missing. I texted Abigail asking about the rest. She said that was everything Selena had. I said that was a lie. And I had video evidence of Selena taking more than that. Week 2, Daryl messaged me from a different number because I'd blocked his original one. He said he and Selena had broken up because she was too dramatic and needy. He said he wanted me to know he wasn't involved in any of this anymore, and I shouldn't include him in any legal action. I told him I'd never planned to include him in legal action because he wasn't the one who owed me money. He said good, and then asked if I could tell Selena to stop contacting him because she was blowing up his phone. So their relationship had already fallen apart. The guy who'd convinced Selena to leave me and plan this whole scheme had bailed. The second things got complicated. I didn't respond to Daryl, but I did feel a bit of satisfaction knowing Selena had destroyed her relationship with me for someone who didn't even stick around. Week 3, Selena showed up at my apartment complex gym. I was on the treadmill and suddenly she was on the one next to me. She was trying to act casual like we'd just randomly ended up working out at the same time. She asked how I'd been. I ignored her and kept running. She said she missed me and missed our life together. I still didn't respond. She said she'd made terrible choices, but she'd learned from them and wanted a chance to make things right. I stopped the treadmill and looked at her directly. I asked if making things right included returning my grandfather's belongings and the money she owed me. She said she'd already returned what she could. I said she was lying. She asked why I couldn't just forgive her and move forward. I told her because she'd spent 6 months planning to destroy me financially and emotionally, and forgiveness wasn't something you earned by getting caught. She started crying on the treadmill. Other people in the gym were watching. She said I was being cruel and vindictive, and she didn't deserve this treatment. I said she deserved exactly what she was getting and walked out. I immediately went to the gym management and showed them my restraining order paperwork that I'd filed the week before. They banned Selena from the gym. Week 4, the police contacted me about the theft report. They said they'd investigated and found evidence that Selena had taken property that belonged to me. But since we'd been in a relationship and she'd lived in my apartment, it would be difficult to prosecute criminally. They suggested I pursue civil action instead, which I was already doing. They also said the restraining order had been approved and Selena needed to stay at least 100 yards away from me, my home, and my workplace. When Selena got served with the restraining order, she apparently had another breakdown. Abigail called me upset, saying I was taking things too far and ruining Selena's life. I reminded Abigail that Selena had tried to ruin mine first. Abigail said Selena was her daughter and she had to support her, but she thought I was being unnecessarily harsh. I said she was welcome to her opinion. Week 5, I found out through a mutual acquaintance that Selena had been telling people her version of events. According to her, I was an abusive, controlling boyfriend who'd manipulated her for years. She said I'd isolated her from her friends, monitored her constantly, and threatened her when she tried to leave. She said the only reason she'd planned to take things from the apartment was because she'd paid for half of everything and deserved her share. The mutual acquaintance asked me if any of that was true. I sent them the audio recording from the coffee shop where Selena bragged about manipulating me. I sent them bank statements showing I'd paid for everything. I sent them the security footage of Selena stealing my belongings. The mutual acquaintance said they'd had no idea and apologized for believing Selena's story. They said several other people had heard Selena's version and believed it. So I started sending the evidence to other people who knew both of us. I wasn't trying to destroy Selena's reputation. I was just correcting the lies she'd been spreading. Within a few days, most of our mutual friends had seen the real story. Several of them reached out to apologize for judging me before knowing the facts. A few of Selena's close friends stopped talking to her after seeing the evidence. Week 6. 3 days before the court date, Selena hired a lawyer. I know this because her lawyer contacted me asking if I'd be willing to discuss a settlement before court. I said I was open to hearing their offer. The lawyer said Selena was willing to pay back $10,000 total in exchange for me dropping all other claims. $10,000 out of $41,000. I asked the lawyer if that was a serious offer. He said it was what Selena could realistically afford. I said Selena should have thought about what she could afford before she accumulated $41,000 in debt to me. He asked what I'd be willing to accept. I said the full amount plus return of all my property or I'd see them in court. The lawyer said I was being unreasonable, and the court would likely not award me the full amount anyway. I said we'd find out in 3 days. He said he'd advise his client to prepare for trial. I said good luck with that. Court day, yesterday. I showed up an hour early with 2 folders full of evidence and a timeline I'd created showing every purchase, every expense, every lie Selena had told. I was wearing a suit because I wanted to look professional. I'd even gotten a haircut the day before. Selena arrived about 30 minutes before our scheduled time with her lawyer and her mother. She looked terrible. She'd lost weight and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing clothes I didn't recognize, probably borrowed from her mother. She wouldn't look at me. Her lawyer asked if we could speak privately before going in front of the judge. We went into a small conference room, me and my documentation on one side of the table, Selena and her lawyer on the other, with Abigail sitting in the corner. The lawyer started by saying this case was clearly emotionally charged and maybe we could find a resolution without involving the judge. I said I was listening. He asked what my bottom line was. I said $41,832 plus the return of all my property. He said that wasn't realistic. I opened my first folder and I started laying out evidence on the table. Bank statements showing every purchase I'd made for Selena, credit card statements with her charges, receipts for the car with my name on the title, receipts for furniture and electronics, the lease to my apartment, text messages where Selena had asked me to pay for things, screenshots of Venmo transactions where I'd sent her money. Then I pulled out my laptop and played the audio from the coffee shop. The whole conversation where Selena discussed how pathetic I was, how she was planning to clean me out, how she'd been texting Daryl every night, how I'd come home to an empty apartment. Her lawyer's face changed as he listened. When it finished, he looked at Selena and asked if that was her voice. She said yes, but I'd taken it out of context. He asked what context made that conversation acceptable. She didn't have an answer. Then, I played the security camera footage from my apartment showing Selena taking my belongings and hiding them in her bags. Footage from multiple days showing her systematically going through my things and stealing them. Her lawyer watched the whole thing. He asked Selena where those items were now. She said she'd returned most of them. I said she'd returned less than half and the most valuable items were still missing. He asked her directly where my grandfather's belongings were. She said she didn't have them anymore. He asked what that meant. She said she'd given some things to Daryl before they broke up and she didn't know where he was now. Her lawyer closed his folder and looked at Selena with what I can only describe as disappointment. He said, based on the evidence he was seeing, I had an extremely strong case and she would almost certainly lose if this went in front of a judge. He said the recordings and video footage would be admissible and damaging. He said the financial documentation was thorough and well organized. He said her best option was to negotiate a settlement she could actually live with. Selena started crying. She said she didn't have $40,000 and she'd never be able to pay it back. Her lawyer said that wasn't his problem. She should have thought of that before she took the actions that led to this situation. Abigail spoke up from the corner, asking if there was any way to reduce the amount. The lawyer said not based on what he was seeing. I told them I'd be willing to accept a structured settlement. Selena would pay me $10,000 immediately. the 4,000 she supposedly had saved, plus 6,000 borrowed from wherever she could get it. Then she'd pay me $1,500 a month for 21 months. Total of $41,500, with the extra as interest for my time and trouble. Her lawyer asked what would happen if she missed payments. I said I'd take her back to court and get a judgment that would wreck her credit for years. He asked if I'd agree to drop all other claims, including the theft charges. I said yes, as long as she made every single payment on time. Selena asked where she was supposed to get $6,000 in the next week. Abigail said quietly that she could loan it to her, but Selena would need to pay her back too. Selena asked how she was supposed to afford $1,500 a month. I said she'd need to get a full-time job instead of working part-time retail. She said that wasn't fair. I said neither was planning to rob someone who'd supported you for 2 years. Her lawyer advised her to take the deal. He said if she went in front of the judge, she'd likely end up with a judgment for the full amount anyway, plus court costs, plus legal fees, and she'd have no payment plan. She'd just owe it all immediately, and I could garnish her wages for years. He said this way she at least had a structured plan. Selena looked at her mother. Abigail told her to take the deal. Selena asked me if I really hated her this much. I said I didn't hate her. I just wanted what was fair. She said taking all her money for the next 2 years wasn't fair. I said planning to destroy someone's life and steal their family heirlooms wasn't fair either. We signed the settlement agreement right there in the courthouse. Selena agreed to pay $10,000 within 7 days and then $1,500 a month starting the following month. If she missed a single payment, I could immediately file for a judgment for the remaining balance. She also agreed in writing that she'd attempted to obtain my belongings from Daryl and would continue trying. When we left the courthouse, Selena and her mother went one direction, and I went the other. I didn't feel victorious exactly. I felt tired, but I also felt like justice had been served in a way that actually mattered. This morning, I received a bank transfer for $10,000. Selena made the first payment. I have 21 more monthly payments to look forward to. Every single month for the next year and 9 months, I'll get $1,500 from the woman who thought she could manipulate and rob me. And here's the thing that really gets me. If Selena had just been honest with me from the start and said she wanted to break up, I would have let her go. I would have probably let her keep the car, and I definitely wouldn't have asked for money back. I'm not a bad person. I just refuse to be played for a fool. She chose to plan an elaborate scheme to destroy me. She chose to steal from me. She chose to lie and manipulate and scheme for months. And when she got caught, she chose to lie more, to spread false stories about me, to try to play the victim. So yeah, now she gets to pay me back every cent while I move on with my life. I've already started dating someone new. I've gotten back into shape from going to the gym more. I've been promoted at work. My apartment is cleaner and more organized without Selena's mess everywhere. Life is actually pretty good. And every month when that $1,500 hits my account, I'll be reminded that trying to scam someone who's smarter than you think they are is always a bad idea. For everyone who followed this story and offered advice and support, thank you. For everyone who said I was being too harsh, I hope you understand now why I did what I did. And for anyone out there in a similar situation, protect yourself. Keep records. Trust your gut. And don't let anyone make you feel guilty for holding them accountable for their own choices. That's it. That's the end of the story. Selena tried to play me, got caught, and now she's paying for it literally. Justice served.